Are you looking to grow revenues, increase profitability, or obtain financing? If so, you came to the right place.
Running a business is all about leadership. How do you become a better leader? Learn from the successful entrepreneurs and business owners how to lead your organization more effectively. That's why we created Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business, to help you succeed with your host, Andrew Frazier, Business Growth Pro and CFO and founder of the Small Business Pro University. Every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're joined by experienced entrepreneurs and business owners who share their secrets to success via live stream. Also, every Friday morning, we release a new podcast episode. Either way, you will learn about developing your business leadership skills from our roster of highly performing guest experts. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbprou.com.
Good evening and welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05. I'm your host, Andrew Frazier, and excited to be hanging out with you once again on Tuesday evening. As you know, definitely this is one of my favorite things I do every week, and look forward to having a great show. Even though we've been doing this for almost 5 years, each show is different, and this show is actually very different from any of the shows that we've done before. Our topic this evening is working it out when things don't work out, and our guest is Scott Beresford. Everybody, always looks for business financing, and and looks to it as the solution to their problems, but it isn't always the solution. And many times it turns out to make things more challenging. So we're going to talk about that today. So look forward to talking with Scott, and hopefully you'll learn some things about getting business financing, but also how to avoid having problems with your business financing, or if for some reason you get into trouble, what you should do to mitigate the situation. So very excited to have Scott, who has tremendous experience in this area. Hey, Scott, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Great. Very good to be here tonight. Thank you.
Great. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us and share your expertise. Definitely we've known each other for quite a while, and you've done a lot of work in banking as well as consulting, and you're doing some exciting stuff. So we know each other, but the audience doesn't. So if you could take a few minutes to sort of talk a little bit about your background, about your journey, and how you got to where you are now.
Great. Well, thank you, Andrew. First, I'd like to say it's great to be here tonight. Andrew runs a really great program, and I reached out to Andrew, I guess it was a couple of weeks ago, and just said, hey, I'm doing some consulting work, and I know you're doing a lot of great stuff. And he and I had talked at networking events and had been involved. So when he asked me to come on, I said, I'm not sure you really need me or you would like me, but here I am. So I'll give you a little bit of my story and how I ended up being here tonight. So I'm a career banker. And when I say that, I have almost 40 years of banking experience, and I've worked throughout small business into the lower middle market sector of the business. And my background really has been on, I started in retail. I went through a training program. I was credit trained, and then I fell in love with that side of the business where I knew that I wanted to be on the lending side. I wanted to be providing financing to companies. I wanted to be able to understand what made businesses successful. And before I talk a little bit more about myself, the one thing that I've always loved is entrepreneurs have a great way about them, and their stories are always so different as to how they got to where they are. And we're going to talk about where companies are and maybe how they can look for financing. But really, my background has been on commercial lending. I've been a credit officer. I've been a chief credit officer at a small bank. I've worked at large and small banks, and right now I'm doing some consulting work, primarily helping companies that maybe got off track for a variety of reasons to get solutions, work with their vendors as well as their customers, as well as really not as much on the customer side, but really more with their banks to get things back where they need to be. And so I'm not sure how much more you want me to say, but Andrew, I think really what my role tonight would just be to sort of moderate a conversation about, what do you do when your company's doing great and all of a sudden you're in high growth and things you start to have problems, and what are some of the tactics and solutions that companies can look to work towards to make sure that they stay on the right track? Because to be an entrepreneur, I spent 38 years as a banker, and I was always envious, still am envious when I go out and meet with a prospect, or I talk to an existing customer and say, how did you get into this business? And the stories are always so unique and wonderful. But the biggest thing is they all took a risk, right? So once you take that risk, what happens? If you don't manage it properly, it could end up, it can fail. You can actually not work out to where you anticipated and where you expected to be. So there are tools and things that I can help and other people can help guide. So that's a little bit about who I am, Andrew, and I'll send it back over to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate the introduction. And, there's a lot of ways we can go tonight, but I think I always like to start at the beginning. And, before you can have problems with financing, you need to get the financing. And I know you've done a lot of deals and seen a lot of different types of businesses. And what I've seen, you've probably seen also, is maybe 20% of people seeking financing get financing. And can you tell me what is generally the reason for that?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind when I think about particularly if it's a new business, that's probably the hardest time to get financing, right? In your mind, I don't have the money, so I need the money because I need to buy inventory and I need to, whatever you're doing, whether you're a consultant or whether you're a manufacturer, whether you're doing retail. So when you walk into a bank, the banks, the first thing that people need to understand is when you go to look for financing from anyone, whether it's a bank or a non-bank, they don't want to be an owner. They want to know that you have a plan and that you have the experience and that you have the knowledge to pay the loan back, right? Because in simplistic forms, all a bank really does is bring in deposits, right? Customers give them their money so they can write checks and do other things. And then the bank lends it to someone else. And what they make between what they're paying on the deposit and what they're charging on the loan is how much they make. I mean, that's simplifying it, but in essence, that's what banks do. They take in deposits and they lend it out. And they need to make sure that they have that money to return back when the depositor says, I'd like to make a withdrawal. So it's as simple as that. Highly regulated business, so there's a lot of things that have to be looked at. But for me, when I'm looking at financing a company, I always look to see a couple things. I want to know what the company does. I want to understand that the leadership and ownership of the company have a vested interest in it, meaning they have equity in it, right? So they have a stake in it, which means that if it goes wrong, things go bad, it goes sideways, they can help fix it, or they're going to feel the pain too, right? Because they need to be committed to it. So if you don't have any skin in the game, it's really hard it's easy for someone to walk away, right? So you got to have the experience, you have to have a good business plan. You got to have some equity. So at the beginning, there are tools. I think you can look at EDCs. You can look at the SBA for financing. The majority of the transactions that I've looked at, usually there's, sometimes you have to give up the equity in your property or your residence, or if you own the building, you may have to pledge that or do something along that line. But really, for me, it's always about cash flow. I always look to make sure that there's a good plan in place that says that you're going to be able to finance it and pay me back. So I'll give you an example. So if you have a working capital line of credit and you're looking to borrow, are you going to be able to pay me back? So what are your margins? What are you selling? And I want to look at your projections. I want to look at your financials, so that historically, generally, that's where banks get most interested. A company that's a couple years old is a lot more desirable to a bank because we can see that you've done it, right? So if you're 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and you're showing consistent profitability growth, or if you've had a hiccup, you can explain it. That's critical. Two, I think that you have good accounting, that you have access to be able to provide information timely. So you go to your bank, they're going to say, I'd like to see your last 3 years financials. And you go, you're not setting a good case for yourself. You want to be able to provide financials on a timely basis. You need to have someone providing or preparing them that's doing a good job. So if a bank looks at a tax return and says, this doesn't look right, well, you're probably either A, there's something wrong with it, or B, you don't have the right person doing it, or C, the bank's just going to take a pass on it. So you just really want to make sure on the financing side that you have a good story, that you have projections, you have a business plan. And I'm speaking more to the beginning businesses, because again, that's really it's really the hardest time to get things financed. So yeah, I mean, I think it's the beginning part is the hardest for every business, and every business says, well, I need the money now, and it's true, right? So at the beginning, equity is probably one of the bigger things that companies really need to look and delve into. Where can they get some equity? Is it their own money? Do they have an opportunity to borrow from family members or somebody? But if you have equity, it allows you a lot more breathing room as you're a young company to try and figure things out. If you're just strictly looking to borrow money, success rates are a lot lower. There are lenders out there that'll give money that maybe they shouldn't, and maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. But it puts you in a much tighter position. So I think having equity is also really, really critical, particularly at the start. And as you grow, I mean, and then as a business progresses, I think the financial statements say a lot to me. So to me, the most successful companies that I've dealt with in my career were debt averse. Meaning they would borrow if they needed to buy equipment, if they needed to buy whatever it was, and they understood what the cost was, and they could fathom it and figure out that they could afford to pay it back. Then that always worked out well for them, right? And those are the companies that were sustainable, that had the ability to sell off from generation to generation, or to sell off. One of my clients, I knew them when they were a $40 million revenue company. And when you say revenue, it depends on what you're doing, right? But it was 40 to $50 million revenue company. And they were in transportation. They were, I don't know, $800 million in revenue, close to $1 billion when they sold. They sold to a big company out of Chicago. But they never had a lot of debt, which was atypical for what they did. So they were thoughtful about how they did it. They had good accounting advice. They had good legal advice, and I'd like to think they had a good banker. So that's really, I think, what we where you want to start the dialogue with.
Okay, no, definitely. You covered like so many great points in there, but just to cover a couple, number one, you need to be your number one investor.
Right.
So if you don't invest in yourself, why should anyone else? And there's a difference between an investor and a lender.
That's right.
And lenders don't like risk, but investors sometimes like risk. So you got to balance it out. And then just most of the reason why most people don't get financing is because they're not prepared.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
A lot of those things that you mentioned are just different ways that they're not yet prepared. So, so I think that was key as well. And then I'll just bring up two things that sometimes I'll do is, one, I'll, let people know, because I train on financing is, if you made the loan that you want to yourself from a bank, and you would get fired if it wasn't paid back, would you still make the loan? Because that really puts yourself in the shoes of the person who's lending to you. So
I just want to add to that comment. I've always looked at it very much the same way. And I've always said, would I lend my own money to this person? Because if I wouldn't, why would I want to risk the bank's money? Right. So, sometimes you have to there's different reasons, but you're right on point there, because when in the business I'm in, I've been in it for 38 years, and I've seen people who will endorse and really push for a loan that goes bad and they lose their job, and it happens. And I'm not saying that every loan that they push for was bad, but exactly to your point. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to agree with that.
Okay, no, definitely that's great from from the inside. You've seen that happen, so it's not a anomaly. So so now that we talked a little bit about financing, actually I missed something. Usually we start off the show with a quick intro to what the Small Business Pro University is, because we do the show through the university. But so let me play a quick video, and then we'll be back talking small business with Scott Beresford. So let's take a look. Many small businesses experience low or no revenue growth, and the owners are not making enough money. I founded Small Business Pro University to help you break that cycle by empowering you with greater knowledge and enhanced skills to lead your organization more effectively. Over the past 15 years, I've collaborated with organizations like the Small Business Development Center, Rising Tide Capital, Empower the Village, NJMEP, Rutgers University, and SCORE to work one-on-one with over 1,000 business owners and teach tens of thousands of people about business. My experience includes serving as a naval officer, managing businesses, graduating from MIT, earning an MBA from NYU, and achieving the CFA designation, which has prepared me to accomplish my mission of helping 1,008,000 business owners to sell more, maximize profit, and finance growth by 2028. My vision is to create the ultimate business ecosystem for entrepreneurs. Small Business Pro University empowers entrepreneurs like you to run their businesses more professionally and create sustainable enterprises. We employ my proven proprietary Masterpreneur Playbook framework to guide your journey along the Masterpreneur path and facilitate your Masterpreneur evolution to work on your business and scale faster and easier. Small Business Pro University provides access to valuable resources, partnerships, and relationships that will help you to sell more, maximize profit, and finance growth. Our Masterpreneur initiatives include the Small Business Pro Network, 100+ expert-led multimedia courses, intensive training workshops, Spanish language training, Leadership Live at 8:05 live stream and podcast, in-person Power Breakfast events, and advisory coaching, consulting, and training services. Okay, in addition, upcoming, we have our Power Conference next month, or I guess this month, July 25th in Newark. So you're welcome to join us. You'll learn more about that as we go through. And the night before, we always have a great networking event. So if you can't come during the day, join us Thursday evening in Newark as well. So you'll learn more about that as we go. But back with Scott. And, we talked about, okay, getting financing. One of the things I've found, and probably you've seen as well, is many times people get the wrong financing for the situation that they're in. So, when you look at someone and they get the wrong financing, what are some examples of sort of the wrong type of financing, or some rules of thumb that people should think about in terms of the type of financing they're getting based on their situation?
Yeah, I think the simplest one would be, if you're buying equipment, don't use your line of credit. I see it. We see it all the time where someone will have a line of credit and they'll buy equipment that they need, but the useful life of the equipment might be 5 or 6 years, and the line of credit, which is typically interest only, has usually a 1-year annual renewal date. So the bank's going to look at it and say, okay, well, did you clean up your line of credit? And the answer is no. Why? Well, I bought equipment. Oh, but why didn't you come to us and finance it as you should have, based on the useful life of the equipment? So if it's 3 to 4 or 5 years, that would be probably the easiest example to look at. Is lines of credit get used oftentimes for the wrong purposes. Now, it's okay if you come to the bank and say, I'd like to use my line of credit to make this purchase, but I'd like to term it out and have use of my line again. Is that okay? Those are good dialogues to have, but if you have it afterwards, it's usually not the same conversation. If you come to your banker and tell them up front what your plan is, they might say, I'll get you the term debt right now. We'll fix it for you. It'll be better. And, we'll figure out your cash flow. Because the second thing that's bad about that is if you borrow it on your line and the line's interest only, and all of a sudden you got to pay it off and you need a term loan, if you haven't done the due diligence yourself, or let your bank look at it, the bank might come back and say, you don't have enough cash flow to support this. We're calling your loan. And what does that mean? It means we want you to pay us off. And you go, uh-oh. So that to me would probably be the biggest one, Andrew.
Okay, definitely. And, I think of it as, don't buy long-term assets with short-term liabilities.
That's right.
It jams up your cash flow, just like the example that you shared. So that I see that all the time. And also, a lot of people don't really realize what a line of credit is and what it's for. So could you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think, definitely that's somewhere people get into trouble. And, when you get into trouble, it's a lot easier to get into trouble than get out of trouble.
True. So I think the simplest way, and there are different types, but in the simplest form, for a small business would be a working capital line of credit. And it's exactly that. It means you need to purchase short-term assets, or you have short-term expenses that you're going to get compensated over a very short cycle, so that you can evaluate your cycle. And let's use the example, you have a $1 million line of credit for working capital, and we look at it and we can see your shortfall, and we know that you need about $1 million gap, but you'll be able to pay us back. So we analyze that, and you borrow on the line and you pay it back. But it's really more about understanding what your cash flow needs are, and a line of credit. There are different versions of it, but I won't get into that. But in its simplest form, a line of credit should be used for short-term obligations, payroll. Maybe it's to buy some inventory that has a quick turnover, and your inventory turnover rate, so that you have the ability to, fund those gaps, right? Sometimes people do it through vendors who will give them trade terms. A line of credit kind of helps you with some of those things too. You got to pay back your vendors in between. I always like to see, I always like to see customers who know, if I ask you the question, can you pay this off for 30 consecutive days during the course of 1 year? And if you can't, then maybe we need to look at why, and is there another financing need that's different to it. But if it's purely for working capital, which is your short-term operating cycle, and cash flow needs, you should be able to clean it up. Or sometimes you should just say, yeah, I need it because I don't have any business from July through the summer months, July through September. And then I'm busy again in the fourth quarter. Okay, great. And you're buying inventory in the third quarter, because you're going to sell it in the fourth quarter. It's a really good reason why you would use a line of credit. But if you tell me that you can't clean it up at some point, then we probably made a mistake in terms of the dollar amount you needed, or we don't have the right kind of, you need more seed capital. So,
Okay. Yeah, no, definitely. A lot of people don't realize that you're expected to pay the line down or off periodically. And if not, then you need some different financing for other things, or you need to figure out how to run your business better and more effectively. So, right. So now, sometimes when people do that, they turn to alternative financing. And, what is the impact of that? What tends to be the impact of that? And, how do banks and lenders look at that?
When you mean alternative financing, just sort of clarify for me what you're.
A lot of times it's real easy to get, a line or some short-term cash from someone who will give it to you easily, but may charge you a high rate or may make you pay back daily or weekly in the situation.
So I think the easy answer to that question is banks don't like to see that. If it's not uncommon where the example might be somebody starts using a bunch of credit cards, right? And they start maxing them out and they're using it for their business. They get a business credit card and it's charging them 29%. And next thing you know, they're maxed out and they can't pay it. And all of a sudden you're wondering, why are you past due? Your payments are due to us on the 1st, but now you're paying me on the 5th or the 7th or the 9th. What's happening here? So you really want to understand, why are you borrowing? What's the borrowing cause? What's the need? And I've seen that pop up right there. That's right. Understanding the right type of financing is crucial for a business, because if you mismatch the need, you'll get into trouble, and the banks will figure it out. They might not figure it out right away, because depending on the dollar amount and how often they look at things, but they will figure it out. They're going to look and say, we don't like the way things are going. So, and borrowing money that's too easy usually has exactly what Andrew said. There's a price to be paid. If you're, if the bank's charging you prime plus 1 or prime plus 2, and you're getting it for 29%, there's a big difference in what your cost is, and you'll have a hard time paying it back. Plus, you won't be making money. I mean, that's really the thing that I always talk to people about is, if you're borrowing money, how are you making money at the end, right? So if you borrow $500,000, what purpose is that money doing to help you run a profitable business? It's most businesses are not just doing it because they want to do it to be nice. They're doing it because they want to make money, right? They have families, they have obligations, they have goals. So I think that's really how you got to look at it.
Okay. So definitely, like you said, it can make it harder to get financing a lot of times. I worked with, a client recently, and many times you just have to dig yourself out, which is not fun. And, like you said, that hurts your profitability, and puts you at, in a bad position for future growth. So, so definitely. So now, we've talked about the type of loans and, some avoidance. I think one key thing, in business, relationships are everything. And I would say that applies to your banking relationship as well. Can you talk a little bit about what a good banking relationship looks like, and how you should, go about developing the right relationship with your bank and bankers?
Sure. You know what? You're totally right when you said that. I think I've always been of the opinion that small businesses particularly need to have a good relationship with a bank or banks, but usually you got to have one or two people that You get to know, they get to understand who you are and how you operate your business. One, because they can become your advocate and they understand it. Two, because they're on the lending side or on the bank side, they can help you with other things that you need. Maybe it's treasury management, or it's maybe they have other products and services. It's investments, it's insurance. It could be a lot of different things. It could be leasing. That they're going to be your quarterback at that bank to help you find the solutions to the things that you won't know, because honestly, working all the years I work in banking, if you talk to any banker, we like, oh, we do that. Oh, really? Like, so you can't know everything. Nobody knows everything. And, if someone comes to me and asks me something about a residential mortgage, I have to call somebody and say, could you please talk about this? Because it's not my area of expertise. If it's a business loan, I'm more than happy to talk to them. But even in the world of business lending, there are areas that your banker is going to have to refer to someone else within their own organization, whether it's a leasing person, whether it's if they're doing a derivative on something. So I think, to your point, your banker becomes also your advocate, but they also are the ones that can help you when they look at your business and say, Andrew, I've dealt with other businesses like yours, and here are some of the things that they've done from a banking perspective that might be helpful to you if you haven't already done it or you don't know about it. So your banker is very critical. I think you need to have a good accountant, and I think you need to have a good attorney too, or attorneys. But it's partnerships. It's developing it over the years, because you want your banker during the good times, but you also need them when things aren't going great, right? So there's been a lot of times. Look, we just went through a pandemic, and how many companies got hurt because of what was going on? A lot. And so what did they do? Well, if they had a good banking relationship, their banker stood up for them and said, you know what, I've known this customer for X amount of years. They're good people. They know what they're doing. I can vouch for her. I can vouch for him. And they'll fight for you internally, because sometimes what you don't know is the best thing that you don't know. Meaning, if all of a sudden I take a loan for a long-term customer and I go to somebody, a credit officer, and I say, I present the loan, and they go, no, I don't like that, Scott. We're not doing it. I have to be able to support it and say why we should be doing it and gain their trust to approve a loan. It doesn't, and I'd say 99% of the time, my customers will never know that, because they don't need to, right? They need to know that we got the transaction done for them because we understood who they were, but most importantly, to what you said, Andrew, because I had a relationship or have a relationship with that customer. And I have confidence in that when I ask them a question. That's the other thing about the relationship. It's not just, you'll go in and the bank says, oh, we want to give you this. We want, open a new deposit account. We want to give you merchant services. We want you to do treasury management. We want you to do all these things, right? And your head's spinning a bit. It's really more when things are a little tight, you go to your banker and say, you know what, Scott, I got some things going on here. Let me just explain what's happening. Honesty makes it so much easier, and being able to provide to your banker, financial information on a timely basis. So relationship. I agree, Andrew.
Excellent. And, you also talk about credibility and trust.
Yes.
That's hard to earn and easy to lose.
True.
And, if your banker and your bank doesn't trust in you, then you're not really going to get any support. And so, very important to keep that in mind as well.
Mm-hmm.
So now we've got a question here. I think it's fitting for where we are.
Yeah.
So, how do you recognize the first signs of financial trouble in business? And I especially like this question because just inherently as a small business owner, you're going to have cash flow issues.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you're in trouble. But, beyond just having the basic cash flow issues, how can you what are ways you can recognize that you're in trouble?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think the first thing is, a business owner needs to be honest with themselves about where they are and recognize that, wow, all of a sudden cash flow got tight, and analyze why it happened. Was it that one of their vendors changed something? Because a lot of times it's something that happens that it's out of your control. You have a trade term with a vendor and they're giving you 45 days, and they call you up saying, nah, we've changed our policy. It's 20 days. All of a sudden, you've got that 25-day gap that you have to fix. And all of a sudden, well, how are you? I still got to buy from them, but I got 25 less days to pay them. So those are the things that I think sneak up on people, that it's out of your control, but it's a sign that, financial troubles could occur. Now, how can you fix that? One answer would be, if you don't have a line of credit, you could talk to your bank and maybe get a line of credit, because you have a short-term financing gap now of 25 days on whatever you're purchasing. So I think the biggest thing is exactly what the question says. I'll go back to the question. I think you need to recognize that things are different, and I don't know that you have to say it's a trouble yet, but it could be. So I think something as simple as all of a sudden one of your vendors changes their trade terms. Why? Or you rely on, or somebody changes the rates on you. Okay, well, what impact does it have on me? Can I pass that through to my customer? And if I can't, how do I reconcile to that? Or interest rates. We saw interest rates go up 2 years ago significantly, and they went up really, really fast, where everybody got caught off guard. It was rates were, everybody's getting 3.5% on mortgages. And then all of a sudden, boom, it was 7% or 8%. And people were like, what's happening? And there was all this refinancing going on, and it was causing financial troubles for businesses. So I think the biggest thing is just to have your eyes open and recognize that, sometimes you got to just stop, take a breath, and go, what's different today, or what's changing around me, because business does change every day. And I don't care what business you're in, we stock market, publicly traded companies, they have things that become financial troubles to their business. I believe it's really, how do you react to it? And do you recognize, because sometimes people don't even see it. They don't recognize the financial trouble, and it becomes a real problem, right? Because now it's just a problem because you can't get out of it because you didn't see it. By the time you saw it, it was too late. But the example I gave of your vendor changing from 45 days to 20, you see it and you're like, uh-oh, now what do I do? And take a step back, figure it out. What are my options? What is available to me? And then, talk to the people that are in your close circle, and, come up with a plan. I think, and that's really how I would address that question.
Okay. No, definitely. I think that, number one, being proactive and understanding problems sooner rather than later.
Yes.
The old adage is stitch in time saves nine. So, if you can figure it out, but, what I found is most people don't recognize it, because, in my work with business owners, I found the greatest fear of most business owners is numbers and analysis.
Right.
So, if you're not looking at your numbers and you're not analyzing it, then you're not going to know when you get into trouble.
Right. Well, I have one other thing to add that you don't want to rely on.
Mm-hmm.
Do not rely on the magic 8-ball, right? Don't shift this thing and try and get it to give you, let's see what's the answer. It just asked me, ask again later. See what I'm saying? So it didn't answer the question for me. So, don't rely on silly things that are, quick remedies.
Yeah. And part of that I also find is they lack accurate, timely information.
Yes.
So that they don't have the information they need to make the right decision. And many times they're not getting what they need and what they should be getting from their bookkeeper and or accountant.
Right.
and don't know it. So what should they expect from their bookkeepers and accountants?
You're asking a banker that question. So
Yeah.
I think depends on the business, but I think you should be able to, in a relatively short period of time, have data available to you, because you can't react to a change in a business cycle or something that's occurring without knowing where do I really stand. And I'm not just saying look at the bank account and say, oh, I've got X amount of money in the bank. What I'm saying is, can you look at what your financial statement looks like? Do you have a bookkeeper that can provide for you monthly financial reporting? Some people need weekly, depending on what they're doing. But if you cannot get that, I can guarantee you'll have worse days than if you could get it. You will have those moments, and I'll tell you, when I can generally read somebody pretty quickly when I meet them if they're in trouble. Because it's hard, you get to the point where you're in trouble, you can't hide it. Why are they like that? Because I'll say, well, can I have a financial statement? Because they can't produce it, because they didn't make sure that was a tool available to them through either as you mentioned, their bookkeeper or their accountant. And sometimes it's because they didn't ask. A lot of times it's because they didn't ask them. And if you said, oh, I need this, oh, sure, I can produce that for you. But they didn't say, this is part of what I need you to do, which I think goes back to something that, we kind of brushed on earlier. Oftentimes, small business owners don't understand the financial side of it. And someone like Andrew, you'll go in and you'll say, well, talk to me about your inventory, your turnover, and their eyes will glaze over, like, what are you talking about? Or what is your accounts receivable days? Or what are your accounts payable days? And their eyes glaze over and they're like, what are you talking about? And they're more interested in telling you, let me go show you the product that I'm building. It's amazing. It's perfect. I can sell a lot of them. And then you're going to go back to them and say, well, okay, but if you're going to sell them, how, you've got all these things you got to deal with. Timing issues. Does your accountant have the ability, the capacity, and are they willing to, and are you going to pay them? That's the other thing. Oftentimes people will lay down the law that, oh, my accountant won't do it because you're not paying them. So that would be my answer to that question, Andrew.
Okay. All right. So definitely, agree. And the other side I would say is, when you're small, you kind of can get away with just bookkeeping
Yep.
and accounting, but accounting and bookkeeping are looking backwards. And, if you're a decent sized business, you got to be able to look forward. Yes. And so, it's critical to be able to do that. And many accountants, that's not what they do. So you may need some different help. That's one of the things I do as a fractional CFO is help people plan forward, do projections, do budgets, do KPIs. As your business grows, those are things that you're going to need that you may not be able to get from your accountant.
So you do all the sexy things, all the things that make everybody excited, right?
well, actually, I've found that to be able to do the sexy things, since most people don't do a good job with the basic things, I had to also start doing the basic things. So actually, this is something that we, rolled out this year that's been really helping a lot of people. So here, I'll show a short video.
There you go.
You risk cash flow, tax, and profitability issues without timely, accurate financial records. Unfortunately, most business owners are not happy with their current bookkeeping situation. Many struggle with it themselves or have trouble finding the right help at a reasonable price. Even if you have a bookkeeper, there are often inaccuracies that can cost you money due to their lack of accounting knowledge and experience. Fortunately, it doesn't have to be that way. That's why I incorporated small business-friendly bookkeeping into our service offerings. We meet you where you are, whether you want to switch to save money or need us to clean up past issues, bringing everything current for tax and compliance purposes. Use the link below to schedule a complimentary discovery session to explore how we can help. www.sbprou.com/discovery. You have everything to gain and nothing to lose by scheduling a complimentary discovery session to explore how we can help at www.sbprou.com/discovery.
Okay, we're back with Scott Beresford talking small business. Topic is working it out when things don't work out. As the video showed, bookkeeping is the basis for everything. And if you don't have that right, all the other stuff's not going to be right. So, you need to make an investment, but you also need to make an investment in a good bookkeeper, because many bookkeepers don't know accounting. So it's hard to do bookkeeping accurately or the way it should be done. It's important to make sure that you're getting the right type of bookkeeping and getting your info on a timely basis. So cool. So now we've talked about the situations and things that can lead up to things not working out. Now we can talk a little bit about the dark side. Small business financing is great when things are going great, but it can be terrible when things aren't going great, because like you talked about before, you're personally liable and on the hook much of the time. So, it may not be just about you losing your business, but, personally, getting hurt significantly. So, we have a question first, going into it. How important is a mindset when you're facing situations like this? Because many times situations can be resolved. The same situation could be resolved or possibly not be resolved based on how the owner approaches it. So, as far as mindset, if you're going into a situation, what would you recommend and what do you see as the best way to approach it?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. And so some of the people that I've been talking to of recent had really successful businesses, and then they ran into different challenges, some of the things we talked about. But the biggest thing that I need to see if I'm going to be able to work with somebody, or if Andrew's going to work with somebody, or anyone who's doing what Andrew does, is you really want to look the person in the eye, and you got to kind of understand what is their mindset. Are these people just like, oh, well, I'm not going to do it, and I'm not, or are they able to look at things and say, okay, well, I'm in a bind. What are my options? What should I be doing? And if you can keep yourself in the moment and not just get too far ahead of yourself and think about what can go wrong, you can't come up with solutions oftentimes. But if you can, at least you can make the best decision during the situation and get the best result, even if it's not the one that you're looking for. I think it's very critical that business owners have a mindset. I think it's a perfect question. Because if you think you're facing business failure, you probably might be, but it doesn't mean you're going to be. And I think sometimes if the business owner steps back and says, all right, well, what am I doing wrong here? One of the things that, I've worked in corporate America, and they'll do things that they get into big trouble, right? What do? They bring in someone who's got an independent mindset, who's not vested. They don't have all this stock in the company. They didn't start it. their whole entire life isn't about their story going out and telling everybody, I just started this business. It's great. I'm so successful. Look at my big house. Look at my yacht. And look at my vacations. Somebody coming in clear can come in and look at it and say, well, you've got some challenges here, but I think we can fix it. Or here are some things that will help you get to where you need to be. Mindset, though, to answer the question, is, I think, without it, you might as well not even, bring in anyone like Andrew to work with you, because he's going to ask you things and you're going to not want to do it. So yeah, mindset to me is critical.
Okay, definitely. And I think we sort of quasi responded to these, but I'm going to put these questions up just in case you want to share a little bit more on the topics.
Mm-hmm.
One, the difference between a temporary setback and deeper business failure. And then talking about, how do you decide whether to support a struggling business? I know you shared a fair amount around that, but is there anything else that would make sense to share on those two things?
Well, the second one, I think, is I can be pretty precise and quick to the answer. I said, how do banks decide whether to support a struggling business? Number one, is the business committed? 2, ownership committed? 3, to something that, Andrew, you covered. Do they have the capacity do they have a good bookkeeper, a good accountant? Can they provide financial information? And 4, do they have a plan, right? Is there an action plan to show that there is a way to move forward and get out of it? Because it happens all the time. Banks have different terms that they use. They have what's called a watch list. And it's exactly that. We're watching your business because we think there's a problem here. And, either we've seen it or we looked at the numbers and think it's coming. So what does it mean? It might be something as simple as your banker comes out and says, hey, what's going on here? We see some things happening, and you say, oh, it's just a glitch. Okay, good. Or the bank sees you're struggling and they want to get more details. So that's watch list. Second one is workout. That means we've given up on you. If you're in workout, your chances of getting support from the bank went down significantly. It doesn't mean that you won't get it, but it's much, much, much more difficult. So I think those things are the most important things to look at, right?
Okay. No, definitely. And it's good that you mentioned sort of watch list. Even if you're not looking at your numbers, your bank's looking at your numbers.
Oh, yeah. And your banker doesn't want you on the watch list. And that's all about the banker's time. So if I get somebody on watch list, it means I have to get on a call or report monthly or quarterly on Andrew's business saying, I did talk to Andrew and here's what's going on. And yeah, I think everything's good. Or they're going to come back. Well, go back and ask them this, and this. And it's not productive use of my time. It can be, but it's not what I want to do. So yes, if you're on the watch list, you can get off it though.
Right. So you could almost say that if your banker is asking you questions, there's probably a problem somewhere, or you're heading towards it.
Well, not always, because oftentimes, I'll give you an example. I've always liked to go out and I'll say, Andrew, talk to me about your business. And I know your business. So I come out next year. So what are you looking to do this year, Andrew? What are you projecting sales to be? And what do you see as your challenges, so that I can get a mindset as to, and you might come back and say, oh, we've got this entirely new product that's killing it. We're going to go, oh, great. And it might be a financing, because I'm looking at it for not just to see if you're going to go on my watch list. I really don't. That's really the last thing I want to hear, because I don't want to go, oh, Andrew's on my watch list now. Oh, I want to go out there and go, oh, Andrew's got some great opportunities. Great. There's some sales opportunities for me as your banker. So, any banker who tells you they're not in sales is not telling you the truth. They are in sales. They're also in credit, but there's just the sales side, because the banker that doesn't bring in new business doesn't generally stick around. So.
Okay. Great point. So, okay. So, one thing that's always tough is the hour goes really fast, and we're bumping up on the hour. But before I let you go, we want to just get you to share a little bit about, what are the three key things people should take away from our conversation tonight? Because many times people can't remember more than three things, but three things they can take into their day tomorrow that they can utilize going forward to help them be more successful with their business. So if you could take a minute to think about that. I'm going to put a short video about our networking event and conference, and then we'll come back and hear Scott sharing the top three things that you should take away from tonight's session. We're here at the Small Business Power Breakfast and Conference. I'm excited to say that we had a great day.
This event was a wow. Every panel, every speaker has had so much amazing content and good information to share.
This is a good day to put aside to come out and do some learning, but also make some great connections. The ones that I made were impactful.
Hi, I'm Andrew Frazier, masterpreneur and founder of the Small Business Pro University. For more than 10 years, our events have directly resulted in tens of millions of dollars in both revenue and financing for attendees. Join me at the Small Business Pro Power Conference on July 25th at NJ Pack's Nico Kitchen and Bar in Newark, New Jersey to learn best practices, enjoy great networking, and gain useful knowledge. We will supercharge your day. I look forward to seeing you at the Small Business Pro Power Conference on July 25th in NJ Pack at Nico Kitchen and Bar in Newark, New Jersey. To learn more and register, visit www.sbprou.com/conference. Join us for the Power Network event at Makerhoods in the Kruger Mansion in Newark, New Jersey on Thursday, July 24th. Meet with like-minded entrepreneurs in a relaxed environment to chat, connect, and collaborate. I'm Andrew Frazier. Please join me at our Power Network event, and I look forward to introducing you to our members and friends.
Glad to host your network event here at the Kruger Scott Mansion. Thought I'd give you just a little bit of background. The entire Makerhoods campus here is a unique space here in Newark that encourages entrepreneurship at all levels. Of course, it's anchored by the Kruger Scott Mansion, a fantastic 1835 iconic building here in Newark. And we look forward to hosting you and your team here and sharing thoughts and ideas about how to help entrepreneurs grow and thrive.
To learn more and register, visit www.sbprou.com/power-network today.
Okay, welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05. I'm talking small business here tonight with Scott Beresford, and we've been talking about the topic, working it out when things don't work out. And Scott, what are the top three things that people should take away from our discussion?
Boy, I feel like I'm like the David Letterman show or something in the top 10 list, but I only get three, so I'll try and limit it to three. I think the first thing that for me always resonates is, does a business have a plan? It's amazing how many people don't have a plan and work the plan, right? So have a plan and stay present with it, meaning don't just write it and throw it away. Look at it. You know, Andrew or other people can walk you through how to put down a finalize and formalize a plan. It sounds like a lot of work and it's a drag, but it only needs to be a one-page document. So one, have a plan and stay present with it, and don't just throw it away and go, all right, I did it. Okay, Andrew, I did the plan. No, it's got to be a living action plan. Two, I would say, make sure we talked about developing relationships with your banker or banks, but make sure that there's other people that are involved in that too, because there are so many people that can bring expertise and other things to you. So your accountant, Andrew mentioned, making sure you have a good bookkeeper. And if you don't, you talk to somebody like Andrew and say, hey, Andrew, I need somebody who can help me get the numbers so that it helps me with everything that we talked about earlier. And make sure you have a good relationship with the accountant too, and your attorney. The third thing, which I think is important, is don't be afraid to work with outside consultants. Don't be afraid to reach out to someone like Andrew. Go, yeah, but he's going to charge me something and blah, blah, blah. But think about, why are you reaching out to somebody like that? Because something wasn't working, or you didn't know what to do next. And you reach out to Andrew and you say, Andrew, and he's like, you know what, I've seen that before. Here are some options for you. Here's some, because he's not vested from a, I don't want to say ego, but he's not the one saying, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, why would I want to do that? Because the hard decisions are the ones that you need someone who can be an independent view and voice to help you with that. So just to summarize, number one, have a plan. Two, make sure you develop relationships. And three, do not be afraid to work with outside consultants, because that's what they're there to do, and they'll be value added to you. So how'd I do, Andrew? Did I do it pretty quickly?
No, I think that's perfect. I always say failing to plan is planning to fail. But I do really like that you said, even if it's one page, we're not saying you need to have a 60-page type document. You create the document you need, but it needs just to lay out, this is what we're doing and why. And then update it, keep it current. So definitely that. Your relationships are key. I look at it as, if I'm paying somebody to work with me, we need to have a relationship, and they need to be vested in my success. And if they aren't, then you need somebody else. So, relationships, and make sure you ask for, because, if you don't ask for stuff, you don't get it.
True.
So, and then finally, outside help, sometimes you just need somebody who can talk to you, because your employees are going to lie to you, because, not intentionally, but they're not going to tell you the truth. But, someone outside can. I think one great instance, I was working with someone who had a school and wanted it to be the best school ever. So I finally had to say, well, how good is your school going to be if it's closed? And then they got the message. But nobody in their school would tell them that. So yeah, definitely getting that. So Scott, this has been great. You shared a lot of valuable knowledge. It's been, a lot of fun just chatting with you, and definitely from the comments and questions, the audience has gotten valuable insights as well. So, definitely appreciate that. Before we go, is there anything you'd like to share before we close out?
No, well, one, I'd like to thank you for asking me to come on. I think it's, I was kind of like, well, what am I going to be doing here? And I talked to you earlier, and you're right. An hour went by really quickly. So thank you for doing that. But I think it's more valuable for what you're asking people like myself and all the other people that come on to share, because people want to, right? I'm like if someone's like, you got to give back. When you learn something, you got to give back to other people, because it's just good business practice, right? It's someone did it for me, someone did it for you, so I want to do it for somebody else, right? So for me, it's just I've had fun, I've enjoyed it, and yeah, I mean, I'll have to tune in, and I'll have to start asking questions now, because I want to keep learning, and but make sure, if you guys need outside assistance, reach out to people. It's critical. And that's all I wanted to say, because I know we're up against a timeline, and thanks again for hosting and allowing me to share.
Okay, great. No, I appreciate it. I've got Scott's LinkedIn up there, so if you want to connect with him, if you need to reach out to him, definitely it can be a personal matter, but he understands the situation that you may be in, and it's better to ask now than ask when you're in a worse situation. So thanks, Scott. If you can hang out for a minute as I close out. So let's just close things out. So first off, appreciate everybody tuning in. It's been a great show. We always have tremendous guests, and definitely Scott really shared a lot of valuable insights. As you know, each week we have a new guest and a new topic. So next week we're going to be talking about leveraging resources to help small businesses succeed and thrive. Nobody succeeds alone. So there's resources and there's a lot of assistance that you can get out there many times for free that you just don't know about, as well as ways to get grants, get customers, and save money. So next week we'll be talking to Nikisha Wilson, and we're going to be talking about that because she's helped businesses save a lot of money through their hiring practices, through preparing them for grants, through connecting them with valuable resources in the community. So hopefully you can join us next week for the show. And, until then, always remember that the more that you know, the faster and more successfully your business is going to grow.
Thank you for listening to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbpro.u.com.